Greetings and welcome to the Open-Minded Skeptic podcast. My name is Sharon Ann Rowland and I'm your host. So today's podcast is quite topical. We will be discussing in a roundtable environment the disease named COVID-19, which originated in the Hubei province in China. On the roundtable today, we have Will Hamilton, entrepreneur, Rob Newett, founder and chairman of the Australian Federation Party in Tasmania and member of the Federal Executive, Doug Anderson, who has been a medical professional for the majority of his life in the US, Barbara Jean Lindsay, the Cosmic Oracle from the US, and this time the other side of the US, Los Angeles, Amanda Gabrielle Prosser, child abuse whistleblower. Will, do you think it's impossible for younger people, that millennial set, to do this social distancing? Because there's so many occurrences of it.
Well, it's not impossible. It's something that adults can do, and they're young adults. They're a bit rebellious, perhaps, because they might not believe it's so important. And so if they don't believe it's important, then they may not want to follow it. They may take their chances. But I think if this rule is really, really important for everyone, doesn't matter what your age, you've got to be in the game, I think.
How do you think we can encourage them to kind of toe the line a bit more, because they're not?
I think if you gave a bit more evidence about what this virus is, where it came from, and what it's really about, because we've got so many mixed up stories about how it actually originated and who originated it, because Bill Gates has got through the Pirbright Institute's got a patent over it. So, I mean, I don't think you can get them on board without giving them a bit more facts, because at the moment we're all flying in the dark a bit.
Yeah, it is.
I think that's...
Yeah, I completely agree with you. Rob, did you want to jump in?
Yeah, how it originated is not the issue. The issue is it's here and it's now. That's what we've got to deal with. So don't get too caught up in how it originated. I mean, I can take you down a rabbit hole how it originated, make no mistake about that. But that's not what we're going to deal with. We're going to deal with the here and the now. So that's the important issue to concentrate on.
So
I think young people... A bit more evidence than that, though, Rob. They don't just accept what we accept because we've been through the system long enough. We tend to go along with it. But
there's no saying you can put brains in statues, but you can't make them think.
I like that. What about our US people? How are you controlling your young people in the US? Or aren't you? Are they as wild as the ones we're experiencing down under?
Well, I'm probably a little more of a California perspective on this.
Oh, yes.
Yeah.
You're the biggest offenders.
Yes. And so they're on their phones all the time, okay? So they're like texting all the time or on the phones. And so in the beginning of March, there was much more of the younger people together and not understanding what was going on. But I've seen a real shift in April where actually they are getting it and do want to do what's best for themselves and for their friends and for their communities for the most part. I have hope in them, and mainly because they have more of a global perspective to start with than what we did as at least as a senior growing up, because they do have internet access.
Yeah, it's what about down south, Doug? Are you finding your spring breakers coming back and spreading the disease, or?
Yes, that's unfortunate. We had to close the beaches here.
Oh, really? Wow, okay.
All the beach strands have been closed because the huge gatherings on the beach, because the weather is warm here now. They closed the strands. But then what happened was that there is a island beach strand just right offshore here, and everybody's taking their boats there and docking them, and there are literally hundreds of people on this little island.
Wow.
So there's so they're just looking for ways to get around all the rules and regulations. Parties. It's almost impossible to stop them.
Angela, what are your thoughts on this? I don't know how you're going to stop young people, because young people, I mean, think back to your own adolescence. That's when you started going out and being social, and you started to spread your wings. About 14, 15, you're usually deemed responsible enough to babysit. So you're surrounded by children. But that's when you start going out and you start experimenting with alcohol, and you have a puff of a cigarette, and that's when you're doing all those sorts of things. Yeah. And I don't know how you're going to put a bottle on adolescence. How do you do that? Well, I don't think you can. And I think it's unrealistic. I know with the littlies, I've reached out to parents, little ones, if they're really little, they're not really going to comprehend. They're just going to be, why can't I go and play with my friends? Then they get to a certain age and they know something's going on. But adolescents, I've taught enough sex education to adolescents to know that's when you're about to explore your world. Yes. It's well, look, I've had a similar situation. I've got not teenagers anymore. I've got a second year uni student and a 23-year-old. My 23-year-old's been great. She's kind of enjoying. She's just sleeping a lot. But my younger daughter has actually snuck out to see her boyfriend, and and the only reason I knew that happened is she had a hickey when she got home. so it kind of gave it away. I know. And so I think we're all agreed that the young people should be taking this a lot more seriously than they probably are. But there'll always be those one or two that will, try and break the rules. So let's start with Rob for the next one. So Rob, in Australia, we've now had multiple reports of both supermarket goods and medical supplies being shipped by foreign visitors to China prior to the COVID-19 being declared a pandemic or its effects being shared to the world. Supplies that the Australian population have not been able to get hold of since the beginning of the outbreak. Sanitizer, face masks. Should temporary laws halting such practices be implemented by our government during this time?
Well, I think you'll find that at this point in time now, that is the case, that all shipments of all those things have been suspended from leaving Australia. Should it have been implemented prior to that? Yes, it should have done, because when you declare a pandemic, and you know that these are going to be the necessities that you require and that the people of the country are going to require, there is absolutely no way that the leader or the commander-in-chief would allow ammunition to be shipped out of the country to the enemy so they could fire it back at you, so to speak. That's just logistically, it doesn't work like that. So yes, the government should have stepped in a lot earlier and suspended all this and made sure that those necessities that were within Australia's boundaries stayed within Australia's boundaries for our protection, given that we've seen the effect of what's happening now in China and Wuhan. But we'll discuss those things later on when it gets to conspiracy stuff. But if the numbers are real coming out of China, we can see that there's been a flattening of the curve, as they call it, and a decline in cases. But you can't, honestly, I just don't think you can believe all the information that's coming out of China. I just face it with a certain scepticism, which I think probably looking around and seeing the pictures, the majority of you probably do. We probably all share that same scepticism.
Yes, I do. I believe most people now are kind of like shaking their heads at what occurred. Doug and Barbara, were you aware of what happened in Australia? That in between when we all started to get sick, but before we realised how serious this was, we had two business groups that were run by Chinese citizens. They went to medical facilities, to supermarkets, and they bought up the majority of the masks and medical supplies in Australia and shipped them to China. It's criminal.
I was not aware of that at all.
I personally haven't been able to get a face mask since this began. Or hand sanitizer. Has anyone else?
We still don't have toilet paper.
Yeah.
Can I tell you what happened here? Because that affected where I live. I have friends who live, when I visit them, it's a 4-hour drive, and it started there from the metropolitan area. They would hire these certain ethnicity. I hate to say that, I was not raised to look at the colour of anyone's skin. And unfortunately, it was a particular ethnicity. They would hire a bus. It started in the metro area, and they worked out. They do a day trip, and they go to 3 or 4 country towns and strip the supermarkets clean. Now, it started here. They worked their way down to us. They would hire a bus and then put one of those trailers on the back with a refrigeration unit. So it wasn't just toilet paper and essentials. It was actually frozen goods as well. Now, this is what happened in my town. I'm a rural town, farming town, plus outlying villages and lots of farms.
Wow, I can't believe they went rural. I can understand doing a city, but I can't understand rural.
But we worked it out. We didn't even need any government help. Locals, we've got one of those pages on Facebook, I live in, our town, and then people were noticing what was happening, and we were worried about the elderly. That was the prime concern. Yeah. That the elderly would miss out because they're frail, they have their routine, and they go and do shopping at a certain time, and that's their life. That was the prime concern. Next thing I know, the police are moving them on. Someone even said, I saw one writing out a ticket, and I thought, if I was still a police officer, I'd be writing as many tickets as I could, as many as the law would allow. But what they didn't realise is, because I'm a former police officer, in the radio, the next town would hear what was happening, so they'd be ready for them. So they didn't have a hope. Once we got a handle on it, the police radio, the next town they'd be waiting, they wouldn't even get to park. But we worked it out. We didn't need the government. We didn't need anyone helping us. We sorted it out ourselves.
Well, yeah, I'm just surprised they went rural. I mean, that's kind of a level even worse than I was actually thinking because...
We still don't have toilet paper. Now, I'm on a disability because my
Would you like me to send you a couple of rolls?
That was another interesting experience. Monday, Wednesday, Friday, I can go to Woolworths for an hour between 7 and 8. You don't have to wear a mask. You don't have to, whatever you want to do. If you want to wear a mask.
You have a mask. I'm impressed you have a mask. That's like...
It was a full gas mask. Someone photographed me. It was like this, really proud, going along, and the other people are just standing there waiting. Anyway, that was an interesting experience because I went the wrong day. Tuesdays and Thursdays are for emergency services. Fair enough. I said, okay, I'll come back tomorrow. And there was one lady there. She was like, I said, look, I'm a former police officer and I'm a teacher. By this time she was at the car and she'd taken a mask off, so obviously she thought she was safe. I said, she couldn't understand what emergency services meant. I said, AMBOs, police, fires, people who save lives. And then she got it. And so she went. But the morning I went, there were all these people waiting, and one of the staff came out and said, there's no toilet paper and about 20 left. They were just there. They go every morning.
We should see how many people. Has anyone here actually not, apart from Amanda, aka Angela, has anyone else run out of toilet paper? No? That's good. So it's only you. So you've got some now? Okay. Doug, in the US, have you heard of anything like that happening in the US? Like shelves being cleared off and then sent overseas? Or is it just your own people that have been like going in and wiping the shelves clean?
I had not heard about all that happened with you, but here we just have locals going in and taking everything they can carry.
So it's more of a prepper mentality.
That's including meat.
Oh, meat is
okay. You cannot get meat in our grocery stores.
Wow.
Because people go in and buy it all and put it in the freezer, and we can't get any. They did start setting aside times for people over 65.
Oh, that's good.
So I lucked out. I can actually get into the store before everyone else. But it's been bad here. There's still no toilet paper on the shelves.
Wow. I think I was kind of lucky because my neighbours have had difficulty getting toilet paper, but they just where my eldest daughter's boyfriend's family lives is we're already on acreage in Brisbane, but they're out even further, and they've just built this tiny little supermarket area right near where they are, which is in the middle of nowhere. And my daughter said, look, why don't we try at this place? So no one knows it's there. It's like in the middle of nowhere. So I've been going to that centre, and they've got everything because the truck rolls up and no one knows where it is. It only opened like 2 weeks ago. So I think that might be why I'm okay on the toilet roll front. I don't know. Will, you're also a Brisbane person. Have you had trouble getting toilet rolls?
No, I haven't, but everyone else has.
All right.
I mean, the shelves are just empty of toilet paper, but I got a little supply, and yeah. But speaking of this whole subject, I really think this is a very good example. I married an Asian woman, so I'm not racist in my belief, and I think the way in which people from Asia live in much, much more difficult circumstances than us, that when they see difficult times like this coming on board, they're much, much more efficient at...
Yeah, they are.
Whereas we're just cruising along, just being ourselves, but they're very organised and they do it. I'm sure what they did in your country town, they did very efficiently inside the cities as well.
Yeah, well, I only heard about the city, so...
I'd just like to add one thing. There was a lady, they came on Facebook, they actually advertised her and said, make sure her face. She was saying, come to me, I will pay you to do this. To go and strip, to come to me, I'll pay you $1 per item to do this.
Wow. Yeah, as you say, efficient. It's look, that particular one, I think I'm still in shock that it was such an automated process, and I think I'm the fact that China, I suppose, were ahead of time, knew what was going on, and they still did it. That's the thing that gets me. That I think they're called. Is it called the CCP, the ruling party in China? That was my understanding. Amanda, not Angela, is that the directive that was given to the two businessmen, the Chinese businessmen who did the big ship out, basically in the shipping containers, the 300,000 masks and all that was done under order of the CPP or that party. That was my understanding. What you described, Amanda, the only time I've heard anything like that was in respect to the baby food, and I actually
that was some time ago.
That was years ago. That's the only time I've ever heard that. But I think what I really wanted to kind of discuss here though was how everyone feels about the fact that a country kind of made a decision on a country level to go to another country and take needed resources from that country because it had that information under its belt. I think that is insidious, personally. I don't know about the rest of you, but that would be. I mean, just imagine if Corona had turned out to be a lot worse than this, and the whole of Australia had no face masks. By the way, the US, don't panic too much or worry about us too much. There is two or three factories stopped producing their own products over here, and they've started to produce face masks. Very similar to what your pillow guy did in the States recently. Is it My Pillow Guy? Is that what you call him?
Yeah.
Yes.
So that's happened. That happened over here. So our medical personnel have now got all of their masks, and it was great that for Doug to mention earlier that you do need to change the mask, because a lot of people don't realise that, and the same with gloves. Once you've worn it once, you can't wear them again, basically. And so a lot of people were saying once they actually had this understanding that medical people only need one mask and they just wash it or something, but no, not the case.
No.
And Sharon, I think the real issue is that we have to differentiate between the Chinese people who are quite lovely,
oh yes,
the CCP, who are ruthless gangsters, and now inside China, as the word's getting out, the people are getting very, very angry, and they're knocking over police vehicles and setting them alight. They're really quite angry, and they're rioting. in quite a few places.
Yeah. And that's why I did actually try to differentiate then too, that there is a difference. You know, my understanding was that it was a directive from that CCP or CPL. Exactly. I'm not really sure what the CCP. Yeah, that was my understanding, rather than it, you know, just being something that kind of a homegrown movement, you know. We'll go to Barbara. We'll kick off with Barbara in the US. What are your current thoughts on the mainstream media and their fear-mongering, as well as their blatant lack of support towards respective governments and health services at such a difficult time? I mentioned this mostly from the perspective of, I've seen a little bit of your mainstream news, and it's a bit disturbing how they're not... Usually in a crisis, all the media and all the people kind of, you know, support the government, even though they may not vote for them. It's just a normal thing, because you need to all get together to pitch, you know, work your way through together. And what we've seen from a lot of the mainstream is the opposite in the US, I thought. They're kind of battling, even though it's kind of like no one gave them a smack as a child and told them to, gave them the basics. I mean, how do you guys feel about that when you turn on the news and they're beating up your president, and then 2 days later it turns out what he said was correct and it was good advice, but it's confusing, isn't it?
Yeah, I think that most of the people that listen to mainstream news all the time, and I do know some of those people, and they are so stressed out, because they feel helpless, and they're, like you said, tossed one way or the other, and it is about fear, about that they have no way to voice an opinion or have an opinion or to even go beyond themselves to find out really what's going on. And if from one day they'll say, like, it's like, what I understand it is that it's like in city they don't have basketball or sports to get the people, what would be the word, entertained with. So instead they're using coronavirus, so many thousand dead today, so many, you know, and are dying, and there's nothing to be done, and da. So it's like, that's how they're doing it. So it's more like, almost like an entertainment then, and the facts are just strictly facts, and they don't have very many solutions.
No, and the fear mongering, panic. Yeah, it is. And Doug, like a good example this week, Doug, is the ship. I saw people basically saying that Trump was lying about the American frigate, or I don't know my ships, so apologies if it's a battleship or whatever. But anyway, the huge ship, the really big white boat, that basically for about 3 days they kind of said he was lying about promising this medical ship to come in and help in New York, and they kept on like saying awful things about him being a liar about this. And then guess what? Today it turned up in the harbour, you know, and basically they didn't take any of it back, or I was just sitting watching this show and thinking, oh my God, these people are just evil. They're just awful people, and all they're about is like making somebody worry. So I just thought, if I was a New Yorker and I thought that, you know, I was medically impaired or something, and I was waiting on that ship to come in to help me, and then there's these radio hosts and there's TV hosts all telling me that it's not coming, I would be in a very difficult position. So I don't know. Doug, what do you make of it all? It's changed so much really in the last 10 years, hasn't it?
It has. It's unfortunate because they are supposedly, they get away with it by saying it's their opinion. And not broadcast fact and news. So they can say whatever they want, whenever they want, and get away with it. It's no longer necessary to tell the truth. And so because of that, I have stopped watching any mainstream news because it's not news. It's just garbage. So, you know what I watch?
What do you watch?
BBC.
What do you watch? ABC?
BBC.
Oh, the British
BBC.
Broadcasting. Oh, okay.
Yes. It's a lot closer to the truth.
We have something similar over here called ABC, but I find they're a lot of propaganda, so I don't know about you guys.
Yeah, I think it was CBS here in the United States that broadcasted a picture of an Italian hospital and said it was a New York hospital.
Oh, God.
I saw
Until
that.
somebody compared the two pictures to each other, and then they retracted it. But unless you get them dead to rights, they won't retract anything.
No. Well, I had something happen this week. There's a woman who's she's pretending, she never says what she is, but she's pretending to be a doctor or a medical professional. She's got the scrubs on and she seems to be in a kind of a medical background. And she's saying how it's all a lie. There's no such thing as the virus and no one's actually sick and all this sort of thing. It's just classic. And but if you check out her YouTube page, it's only been active for 4 days and she's got 5,500 people liking it. Everyone knows if you've set up a YouTube page, there's no way on earth you can get 5,500 people in 4 days with free videos. I'm sorry. And so it's obviously a joke that some type of propaganda has been put in play by, and somebody's paid for the likes or whatever. And she's been caught out. She's actually an actress on a soap, but everybody was liking and spreading this, and it's kind of like, but I mean, that to my mind though is an evil source of propaganda, because that would mean she was basically saying there's no such thing as this virus, and people are, and the thing that's led them to that is all these actors coming on and saying they've got it, but they're asymptomatic, so they still look glamorous. I don't know if you've seen any of these little ads. So we really should just ban all celebrity, I think, from YouTube. It'll solve a lot of problems. So, but that's a different discussion. Will, I was going to come to you next.
When they've been accused of having a positive coronavirus test, it's usually a sign that they've been detained and the police are investigating them.
Oh yes, they're on that list, are they? Yes.
Yes.
So you and I should have a chat about that at some point. You and Rob and I. So we might do something separate on that. Angela, so what are your current thoughts on the lack of support that we're seeing to the government and healthcare professionals due to the mainstream media? Mm-hmm.
Well, I actually have a friend who is at the forefront, a medical professional in an intensive care ward in a metropolitan hospital, who is there. Sent me a photograph. They wear the full garb, the big, thick purple gloves. I don't know how they get cannulas in and needles. They wear goggles, the mask, and then that big perspex that comes right down to here.
The shield.
Sent me a photograph of them.
Yep.
And said, I'm the one in the middle. And I thought, thank goodness for that, because I couldn't even see their faces. So they're wearing the full garb, but I have seen that particular friend posting and asking people to be mindful of the fact that they don't even have the equipment, but if you can at least wear a mask, wear a mask.
Mm-hmm.
I asked specific questions, but we can talk about that later. Mm-hmm. But to sticking to question 6, I think the mainstream media, I don't watch a lot because it's rubbish and I just haven't watched it for a long time, but I guess I have to watch a little bit now to know what's going on, because it's just fear-mongering. It really is, mostly. And that,
definitely.
You mentioned that picture, and I saw that picture with the two...
Did you see it? Did anyone else see her?
I wasn't surprised. It's the sort of thing they do. And I don't know if I should mention, but a school friend of mine ended up editing the major paper here in Australia. And when I finally met up with him years later, I tried to broach a particular subject. And you know when you're in the awakened state and you can only talk to people about certain things, and suddenly you realise, oh, well, we can't go into that because they're just not there.
Mm-hmm.
It was like that, and I thought, yeah, you are probably told what you're allowed to write about, and you probably control all this, and you're probably a member of the, the secret, well, that's not a secret anymore, excuse me, the secret handshake club, we used to call it, the Masons. It just dawned on me that they control everything, and I'm not a conspiracy nut. I don't do conspiracy. Tonight I've got my legal books here. I've printed off the law. I've got a friend who's actually in the hospital working at the forefront. I don't do conspiracy.
Just so that you guys know, in Brisbane, the way that this usually works is they pick a hospital and then they quarantine those sets of people in a single hospital if they can. That's what they've done in Brisbane. And in Brisbane, that hospital is the Princess Alexandra, the PA will. So don't go anywhere near there, sweet. And tell your mates if they have to go to a hospital, pick a different one, pick the Mater or whatever. So we have around 10 hospitals in Brisbane, but only one of them has actually got patients in it. And a lot of stuff we're seeing online is they're going into hospitals, I think, that haven't been assigned as corona ready, basically. So and I think a lot of people are going into those hospitals not seeing anyone in like the full hazard gear and saying, oh, it's a bit of a fake, but it's just not handled that way. And my daughter's in second year midwifery at Logan here, and I've actually had her asking everyone who comes in from different hospitals what's going on. So it is a thing. People are ill. And they're just in one place. They're just consolidating where they keep them. Let's go back to Rob.
In respect to your question 6, mainstream media. Sharon, you know my feelings in respect to mainstream media, I think, pretty much.
But we all share that. Everybody here, yes.
But we've had discussions before and through my writings and stuff. So our relationship is, you've got a better understanding of me than these people. So mainstream media, I just made a couple of quick notes, and there were some things. I think Barbara mentioned something about keeping it busy or something. There's an old saying, it says, give them bread and circuses and they'll never revolt. Right?
I've heard that one, yeah.
That's pretty much the case in that respect. And as far as the media is concerned, never, ever, ever let the truth stand in the way of a good story, right? Because the truth doesn't sell newspapers or create good media. It only makes people depressed. But never let the truth stand in the way of a good story. So that was that one. And in Australia, we used to have a program. It was a comedy program. I think it was one of them, and they did a skit about 60 minutes. And it come down, and they started, how they introduced the people at the beginning, I'm Ray Martin, or I'm Ray Has Been, and so, and he can come in and he said, this is 48 minutes of bullshit and 12 minutes of ads. Well, nothing was more closer to the truth in real terms about the mainstream media, and 60 minutes summed it up in that instance. Because every government, every corporation, every business uses the media for their own propaganda means, because that's what the media is. The media it's a propaganda machine, and it's a machine designed to make profit from advertising and making TV and giving news, and they don't care whether it's real or not. They care whether it makes money and what ratings are. Right? That's what they care about at the end of the day, and then they care about the shareholder. The media is nothing but a propaganda machine, whether it's for its own economic purpose, or whether it's for the purpose of a government disseminating information to control the masses, which it invariably does through one means or the other. So mainstream media can neither be trusted or adhered to in real terms, because you just can't trust it. And when you can't trust something implicitly, then you have a problem, you have an issue. And I think this is the issue that a lot of people are finding within themselves in this modern world, is that because of the internet and because of the availability to access information, people are now being able to, check things, to do their own research and to find out things for themselves. And when it comes to mainstream media, first of all, do you trust it? Well, it can't be trusted. You've got to watch what it produces, but you can't trust it. You just can't anymore. Well, it's a sad indictment of our society. That's the worst part about it. We don't now have a real reliable functioning source of information for our society. I mean, for instance, in the 2016 presidential elections, Hillary Clinton was holding rallies in halls, in what we call halls or community spaces and things like that. And she was lucky to get 150 people. And they get the cameras up real close and project this background. And then later on, they fill in the shots with the same crowd. They're all just photoshopped in.
Yeah, I saw that.
And then Donald Trump, with Donald Trump, poor old Donald Trump, he was actually selling out stadiums, had to turn people away. You can't beat that with a stick. And that's how the media portrayed things.
Yeah. So
it just goes to show how corrupt the media is, how bought it is, and how bad it is for the rest of us in this world who are truth seekers.
If I can just throw to Doug and Barbara, I personally think your president has been responsible for waking up so many people to the mainstream news and to the any media all over the world since 2015 really. How do you feel about him getting out there and declaring them all fake news? Do you think it's actually done more damage, or do you think, like me, that it's actually started to wake people up to the truth of the situation?
I think it's like throwing a pebble in the water, and it's just starting to have the waves. And it started slow, but I think it is catching on fire.
Yeah.
But I still have to say, it's a spark that's starting to come up, but there's still so many attached to the what they see and believe on television. They're just kind of addicted to it. So they are having some wake-up calls, mainly because they're walking away from that a little bit, because they are isolated at home. And in that, they're maybe paying more attention to one another and what they need first and foremost, and not being entertained so much.
Exactly. And finally, Will.
I don't know how many people in America have actually heard about Project Mockingbird, where the CIA have taken a very, very assertive role in governing what news is published. And then going back before that, you've got the Council on Foreign Relations meeting in 1917, where they decided to buy 85% of all the media in the US. And they have been practicing now for 103 years in using that power, and now they've got it down to just 6 people who all belong to the same political party. So now you have really propaganda coming out of the mainstream media because it's all owned by the same sort of people.
Correct.
And I mean, they're just losing so much credibility. And like recently, they published stories about how horrible the coronavirus is and how all the hospitals are overwhelmed. And then citizen journalists have gone to those very same hospitals and just videoed nothing there, absolutely empty. There's no patients, no doctors, no nothing. So with the internet, I think citizen journalism is going to become much more powerful now. People like what you're studying are going to be part of it.
Yes. It's one of the reasons I chose to do digital media. It's and in fact, one of my very first papers that I handed in, and I got an HD for, I might point out, was Truth in the Media. And it's digitization is the best thing that ever happened for truth, apparently. So I'm with you. Well, that's all for our podcast. Thanks for listening, and remember, if you want to support what we do, then share, subscribe, and leave a positive review over on iTunes for The Open-Minded Skeptic. My team and I look forward to entertaining you once again in our next podcast. To check when our next podcast is, simply head over to www.tomspod.com www.tomspod.com. That's www.tomspod.com.